Welcome to Worldwide Jain Virtual Classroom. This is session number 23, I believe. Uh, Today we are going to deal about conflict management. So up until now, we have seen various stages of management of stress. Uh, some of them being basically how to contain stress, then how to basically reduce the intensity of stress. Then one of them part of it about managing stress is managing conflicts. So oftentimes, whether we want it or not, we find ourselves into different type of conflicts, either at home, either in the family, or in the workplace, or in the social life. Uh, Conflicts can range from different matters, subjective, objective, relative matters. People may have difference of opinions, and sometimes we may very well find that some conflicts are simply inevitable. They are just bound to occur because of difference of opinion and lifestyle. So having to deal with conflict, learning to deal with conflicts is a very, very important step. If we cannot learn to deal with conflict, then we may find ourselves into unnecessary stress. And that is the very reason why today we are going to talk about basic conflict management, studying the nature of conflict, what are the types of conflicts, how to basically think through different conflicts to resolve it in peaceful manner, so that we can remain stress free and we can do our work, we can conduct our life peacefully. So with that, let me share my screen. And you guys see my screen? Okay. So first question again, just like how we started with stress, when we talk about conflict, we have to kind of talk about how do we define conflict, right? What is really conflict? Then how would you define conflict? Any
Disagreement,
ideas?
basically.
Yeah, Pritesh?
Disagreement between thoughts of two person, two people.
Yeah, disagreement is one of the sources of conflict, right? Sometimes there may not be disagreement, but there may be dislike. So, for example, you did something to me, you said something to me that I didn't like. I don't necessarily disagree with you on anything, but I just don't like what you are doing to me, and that itself can put us in conflict because we are on the other opposite side of the position. Basically, what we I didn't like what you did. So conflict is basically if you want to in a broader terms define it, basically a dislike towards a situation. Now think about this. Normally we see conflict between two people, right? If you go by this definition of conflict, you don't necessarily have to have two people. You can be in conflict by yourself. The moment I have a dislike about something, the moment I don't want something, the moment I feel, I things are not going my way and I get irritated, I am in conflict basically with myself. The conflict is first, yes, the result of the conflict is normally seen between two people or among the group, but normally very first sign of the conflict is within oneself. Now there could be multiple sources of conflict, right? Well, one of them is basically intolerance towards a different viewpoint or choice, which is what Pritesh was just mentioning, disagreement. And in fact, what I want to point out is, think about this: disagreement in itself does not necessarily bring conflict. Uh, I'll give you a different example. Suppose you have a belief about something, and I have a belief about something. Many people don't disagree with Jain beliefs, right? But that doesn't necessarily put Jains into conflict with other people, because what we believe is simply we simply disagree with other people's behavior, right? If they're not in accordance to the law of nature, simply disagree with them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we hate them or we are irritated with their behavior, right? So we don't have any dislike towards their behavior, because we think everyone is free in their own right to everyone is free in their own right to do what they want. Basically, everyone has their own everyone is a master of their own destiny, and everyone is responsible for their own conduct. So in that case, although we disagree, we don't necessarily are in conflict. The conflict arises when we have intolerance towards a different point of view or choice. Intolerance means just a dislike. Basically, certain things we may not agree with, but the moment dislike, the feeling of dislike or hatred arises, that's the moment where we are in conflict. Do you agree or not, Pritesh? Do you agree?
Can you repeat that?
What I'm trying to say is that just having a difference of opinion doesn't necessarily mean that we are in conflict. We can disagree about many things, but so long we don't have a dislike about that situation, it's not necessarily conflict, right?
Yeah. Well,
Disagreement is a matter of knowledge,
right.
but dislike is basically is a thing that makes us unhappy, basically.
Well, if you have disagreement, but the approach also can change. So approach towards the situation.
Is it
Uh,
again?
I guess the dislike is not towards the situation itself; it's towards the approach, I believe. Right?
I mean, in different situations, dislike could be towards many things, right? I mean, it's there are so many types of dislike, right? Let's first classify the sources of conflict into two parts. Okay, the first part is intolerance towards a different point of view or choice. So, although I may disagree with it, the moment I have an intolerance and I don't want other position or a point of view to exist, or I have a hatred or dislike about it, that's the first source of conflict. The second source of conflict is not necessarily this first one is related to disagreement, right? It's like more disagreement. The second source of conflict is about dislike about someone's behavior. So something that you did or something you said that I didn't like, your behavior I didn't like, something like that. You may not like my behavior. So it's kind of like dislike towards others' behavior. You don't necessarily have a difference of opinion in terms of any matter, but simply a dislike towards something that someone does. That's a second type of source of conflict. So now let's first go into this first type of conflict where we have intolerance towards a different point of view or choice. So here, key thing to understand is that there are two things, right? One is a disagreement in itself. The second thing is a dislike towards a disagreement or intolerance towards a disagreement. So let's just first see why the difference of opinion arises into among people. Why there can be a difference of opinion. So the way to resolve these type of first type of conflict with a disagreement is to identifying a source of difference of opinion. So normally, there are generally three types of matters that we always deal with. One of them are objective matters. So objective matters are kind of facts of nature. Suppose okay, what is the property of the sugar? Sugar is sweet. Similarly, there are objective matters in our profession, in our work, in our daily life that we may deal with. And if someone doesn't have the same opinion about us in objective matters, then there is a disagreement because they may think something different, right? And you can find many examples of it. Even in your, I would say, in your medicine, there can be a difference of opinion among doctors in objective matters. That you may think a certain drug is helpful in certain situation, while the other doctor may think it's not helpful or something like that, or it may possess certain properties about something, and other doctor may not think that way. So objective matters, thing to notice is there is only one truth. Okay, there is no There are no multiple. Objective matters are simply like really absolute black and white matters. It may be that one or other person may not have full knowledge of that fact, maybe may have a different opinion, but that's a different story. But there is only one truth. So we'll see later, a little bit later. We'll see how to basically think through these type of difference of opinion and deal with this conflict. But the second type of matter uh, we can look into is are the relative matters, where suppose you go into the market and you bought a toothpaste, and I go into the market and I went to the same store, but I bought a different toothpaste. Now, why did we make a different decision? Because this is a relative matter. You may have certain criteria of your own in your mind. I may have certain criteria of own in my mind, and I may have even if we have the same criteria, we may have different emphasis on a different criteria. Maybe I may be paying more emphasis to the cost. I want to save money, so I may be going for a cheaper toothpaste, even if it's not that great in qualities. And maybe you may be placing more emphasis on the quality, and cost may not be too much of an issue for you, and you may get a different toothpaste. So these are relative matters. And then the third type of matters that we most of the time, get into, especially in the family life, the subjective matters, the choices based upon individual likes and dislikes. There is no the relative matters, kind of relative truth, right? I mean, there is no absolute right and wrong. Depending upon what criteria and what how much weightage you give to each criteria, choices may be different. And does that make sense? Relative matters. Does that make sense? Any questions here, Pritesh? Does that make sense? Ethan, does it make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah. So the third type of matters are basically subjective matters, which are based upon choices based on individual likes and dislikes. Suppose I like green color and you like blue color. There is no right or wrong about it. It's just based on the likes and dislikes. There is no right or wrong about it. So one of the first thing to do is when we are in a conflict, I'm kind of trying to make a flow chart here that helps us think through the conflict. We should first think, is this conflict towards a different viewpoint or choice? Is it my intolerance towards a different view or choice? Or second, is it because of the dislike towards others' behavior? You can think, just classify it in these two main categories. Then, if you are in part one, where this is due to intolerance towards a different point of view or a disagreement, then you can try to identify, okay, what type of matters is this? Is this objective matter, relative matter, or subjective matter? Then that kind of gives you a basis to think through the conflict. Now, let's go through the objective matters. Okay, how do you deal with the conflicts when it's related to objective matter? First of all, here's the other thing. Before we can talk about dealing the conflict, we have to first solve our internal conflict. If we are in continuous irritation, extreme irritation, it won't necessarily solve the conflict. It will make it worse when we try to solve it with another person. So first, having the recognition that look, everyone has their right of their opinion, and everyone is free to hold their opinion. We don't necessarily control each other's or interfere. By nature, laws of nature, we can't really control or interfere with each other's decision making. So in that case, no matter what the outcome is, first we have to be prepared to accept the outcome, although even if that's not something what we want. So having that mindset at least allows us to build some tolerance and allows us to at least limit our level of dislike in that sense. And that's just the internal preparation before we can talk about dealing with conflicts. So that's the first thing that we should do. Second thing, we should never indulge in a blame game or accusations, because that always makes it worse. That doesn't bring any fruitful result. That always basically brings out the negativity in both the people, like us, and as well as in other people's mind, and doesn't really help in any constructive way. So should not really indulge in a blame game or accusations. We should develop a constructive frame of mind with a genuine intention to resolve a conflict. That, hey, let's do this. No matter what the source of conflict is, we can deal with it positively, and we can really deal in a manner that everyone is at peaceful at the end of the day. So that's the type of frame of mind we can develop. Now, certain times, we may get asked question that what about criminal activities or unethical activities. And in those cases, most of the conflicts of those type, criminal or unethical activity type, should be dealt with in accordance with civil laws, rules, procedures, or the society of the society or organization. So, you just let the law do its job, or policies or rules do its job, and don't necessarily need to interfere. Yes, along with that, we should develop a clear frame of mind that yes, this is all part and parcel of karma. Basically, uh, no person is completely basically to blame. I mean, yeah, person may have made a temporary mistake, but that doesn't make the whole person as bad. That behavior is bad, but not the person itself becomes bad overall. So that's the kind of mindset we should have always. Again, next, one of the other things we should also do is whenever we are being criticized in a conflict, should not take criticism personally, and be ready to introspect and accept our own mistakes. So before we think about others' mistakes or trying to solve others' problems, we should fully introspect ourselves and make sure where our views are, whether our views are correct or not. Even if they are correct, if we are making mistake of accusing someone or not, if we are trying to prove someone wrong, sometimes we may be right, but we may be trying to prove someone wrong with the objective of proving someone wrong, and that is also not right. That leads to more conflict. So, introspect ourselves and getting into accepting our own mistakes is a first step, basically. That keeps us ready when we deal with the conflict with the other person. That kind of makes us ready. Then, after doing all this, we come to the point where we should identify the source of differences of opinion. That could be two things. One could be objective matters, second could be relative matters, and third could be subjective matters. An objective matter, as we know, there is only one truth, but that truth is from one particular angle. So we should try to find out from what angle of reality a person is talking about. Suppose, like if we talk about the nature of the substance, Buddhists always say, right, that everything is temporary, right? And Vedanta philosophy says everything is permanent. There is nothing like temporary. So these are opposing point of views. They are both related to objective matters. But the moment we get into conflict is because when we fail to understand the point of view. Jains say that yes, from the perspective of the paryaya or the form, everything is temporary because form keeps changing. The state of the substance keeps changing. However, from the perspective of permanent attributes, everything is permanent because it remains as is. So, kind of identifying what angle of reality a person is talking about, kind of helps. Sometimes when we are dealing in such a situation, we may find out that person is talking about altogether a different situation or a different point of view. Uh, and so he may be right from that point of view in that objective matter. But if you come to a conclusion that no, it's about the same point of view in the same context, but altogether a different opinion, first we should check. We should have basis for our opinion, and once we think okay, maybe our opinion is correct, you can see if other person is willing to engage and learn about this point of view in detail or not. If he is not even willing to learn into more details, then there is no point in having conversation forward because he has his own opinion, you have your own opinion. There is no point in kind of arguing. So then, kind of after we do this, then uh, deal with him. If he's open, we can talk to him, give him more evidence, give him more basis for our opinion, and have a constructive dialogue. And maybe things will be resolved. Either you or him will come to the conclusion that one of the position is incorrect, and you will eventually converge to the truth. If other person is not really willing to give up the position, uh, incorrect position, also there is no point of having a conversation forward. because then everyone is free to hold their opinions, whether they're right or wrong. That's their responsibility. So then the matter rests there in the objective matters. So that's the way to deal with objective matters. And keep in mind, sometimes, a lot of times, we don't have absolute clarity in terms of what is right or wrong, because we talk about in terms of probability. So talk about in medicine, if we talk about certain type of drugs, whether they produce certain side effects or not. Some people may say yes, it does produce certain side effects, and some people say they don't really produce side effects. Like vaccination is one of those debates going on in the country right now. So now here, a lot of things are based upon probability and the amount of data we have available. So people will have their own opinions even in the objective matters. So it's always best to basically leave things if things cannot be resolved by just a simple conversation or a proper, thoughtful, peaceful argument. And we should just leave it as is. Just be ready to accept others' point of view as is, or even if we don't agree with it. So that's the way to deal with objective matters. Any questions here? Anyone would like to share any examples from their experience of similar type of conflict? Anyone? Pritesh?
Well, what if, let's say, you have your cousin or somebody in your family, basically, you have disagreement, and it's basically over a period of years, you realize that the attitude is always kind of condescending. So how do you ask the person who is victim here to approach that situation?
Can you repeat one more time, Pritesh? Sorry.
So if someone is very condescending to the other person all the time,
Uh-huh.
how do you ask the victim to approach that situation?
Someone is not behaving properly with other person.
Right, very condescending, always condescending.
Okay.
So how do you ask them to approach that situation?
That's a different type of conflict. So when we deal with that second type of conflict, in just a little bit. So here we classified into two types of conflict, right? One is because of the differences of opinion. The other one is towards dislike towards other behavior. We will just wait a little bit. Let's just first deal with the conflicts related to difference of opinion, and then when we get to that portion, we will talk about that. Is it okay?
Okay.
Yeah. But anyone have any questions related to objective matters, conflicts in objective matters? Next, you can go to relative matters. So if you identify that your conflict is related to some relative matter, and identify, good thing to do here is to identify what criteria and how much basically emphasis you have in your mind towards making that decision, and and try to gather more information about what criteria the other person is applying and how much emphasis he has in each of those criteria in making the decision. So asking other person about their own thought process or decision making process will kind of help understand why that person has made certain decision. And now, if in that point, in doing so, when you listen to other person, you'll know why they have made certain decisions. And at that time, when you know the comparison between your criterias and their criterias, you can try to basically reconcile the choices by looking for mutually beneficial choices. Maybe certain criteria are common among you, both of you, and you can say that, hey, look, this is more important for this reason or that reason. So coming to more constructive and mutually beneficial dialogue will basically help you resolve such a conflict. But a lot of times, what happens is when we get into this type of conflicts, we just have our own egos that no, my choice is right, what I've done is right. Another person may think that okay, no, his choice is right. So then there is no the conflict just never gets resolved. Helping each other, listening to each other's point of view, and then comparing the point of views from which we are thinking about, and trying to reconcile those choices on a mutually beneficial ways will definitely help us solve this type of relative matters. So, suppose you want to buy a car. Now, your wife wants to get BMW and you want to get Mercedes. Now, both may have different criteria. So kind of going through this thought process will definitely help resolve this type of conflict and come to mutually common understanding. So that's one of the very important matters. And we find this all the time, right? In family life, all the time this happens. The objective matters. A lot of times we may see that in workplaces where other professionals may have different opinion about something. And even the relative matters come into play even in a professional judgment. Suppose I can't really speak much for medicine, but Ketan, can you give one example about relative matters in medicine in your field, where one of the other doctor could be thinking from a different point of view and may come to a different conclusion about prescribing certain medicine versus you may be coming to a different conclusion and how you can resolve it.
Prarit, I am having a very hard time hearing you. Something's wrong with my computer.
Okay. No problem. Yeah. Pritesh, would you like to, Priyanka, Pritesh, would you like to share an example that relative matters that you may be finding in your work life?
They happen on a day-to-day basis on a lot of things. Nothing that comes to my mind right now. But it's a constant thing. Everything you do with everybody you do, there is always a relative conflict going on. Very rarely there is everybody has the same opinion about a certain thing. It's always a little bit of compromise that you do, be it your spouse, be it your work, be it your friend. It's always an ongoing thing.
So could you help us understand, like, suppose, say, you saw a patient and you came to some conclusion about some treatment, and maybe someone else, your colleague, saw the same patient and came to a different conclusion. You both had a different opinions about what to do in terms of treatment for the patient. And how would you come together and resolve such a situation?
Well, first of all, we in medicine know that nothing is 100%. I mean, and even though if you treat some a disease with certain kind of medication, the likelihood of treating that disease with that medication is not 100%. You can give you something exactly opposite and still patient might get better, either by itself, by placebo effect, or we don't know what. I mean, you always kind of are aware of this fact. So every time when anybody comes to a conclusion, the reason the um, always we ask is give the rationale behind it. There's always something that will support your decision. So if you have the rationale, whatever it is, you kind of okay. And as long as we realize that it's not going to immensely hurt the patient, even if things go wrong, we kind of agree with that and move on. Kind of.
Yeah, that's good. So thinking through each other's decision making and kind of helping each other understand the rationale can help you resolve the matter in a common way, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. Yeah. So these are some of the ways you can deal with the relative matters. But understanding other person's thought process and from what point of views he's making certain decision is the key to solving the relative matters. Okay. In objective matters too, you want to understand why a person is thinking about something that way, why he has certain opinion about certain facts in nature, what are the basis of his opinion. If you understand that, then you have better chances of resolving that conflict. Either we in such a process, there is a benefit of it, right? Sometimes we may think that we have a right opinion, but in reality it may not be right. So going through this thought process and going through this process of resolving the opinions and matters basically helps us find truth too. Sometimes we may find that we may be thinking, we could have been thinking wrong. We will learn truth in that way, and this would happen. We both can come to a proper beneficial solutions without hurting each other's egos or bringing our egos in between base. So that's the advantage of going through these type of thought process. Now, third type of matters are subjective matters. Now, oftentimes you will find subjective matters have no basis. Now, something, suppose you want to buy a furniture. Now your wife wants to buy certain type of sofa, and you want to buy a different type of sofa. Now there are like there may be relativity involved, but sometimes there may not be a relativity involved. Sometimes there is just simply a subjectivity involved. It may be that you like one type of furniture the best, and she likes other type of furniture the best. And the thing is, these type of conflicts are often the hardest to resolve because they're so much attached related to our own egos or own feelings or own attachments and hatreds, and there are no basis for it most of the time. So basically, in this type of matters, looking for a mutually beneficial, mutually agreeable solution are the best way to move forward. That okay, can we find a choice that is acceptable to both, or can we meet somewhere in middle? uh, Obviously we have to think that whatever the position that we or other person is holding has to be moral and ethical, right? Has to be in the boundaries of morality, and basically it has to be ethical choice. And then if there is a difference in positions, and that can be dealt with by finding more common. So in an example, to give you an example, suppose I want to get a different sofa and my wife wants to get a different sofa. We can, instead of trying to basically stick with our opinions or our wishes of getting particular type of sofa, we can think, hey, do we have a common one? Is there a one that we both like? Can we look for such a thing? Or if there are things, we may try to understand why she likes that type of sofa and why I like certain type of sofa. We can try to find out what are the common features that we like, and maybe I may give up certain type of preferences and she may give up certain type of preferences. So trying to look for win-win and trying to basically make everyone happy, find a common ground where everyone can doesn't feel that they've lost too much, kind of a way to peacefully resolve this type of conflicts. And most of the time, we find ourselves in this type of conflicts, and they are the most difficult to solve. Actually, does that happen? Priyanka, Pritesh,
Yep.
and finally, we get to the fourth type of second category of conflict. If the conflict is due to our own dislike, grudges, or towards others' behavior, then in that case, first we have to do all the internal preparations that we have talked about, right? A lot of times what happens is we are so much irritated due to conflict, and then at that time when we try to approach other person, it ends up making it worse. So first we should detach ourselves from that situation if we are in such a situation. Maybe quietly contemplate because we are really upset and we have to solve the conflict within ourselves first. Okay. A lot of times, I'm getting some echo actually. Anyone else is getting echo? Hello? Okay. Now there is no echo. So in these type of conflicts, basically, first we really have to think that our behavior. Suppose someone came to us and told us that they don't like our behavior about something. We have to think: did we really do something wrong? If we did something wrong, knowingly or unknowingly, or if there was something that hurt someone about something, then yeah, we should definitely first introspect among ourselves and see, okay, is there something we can do to improve ourselves? Maybe in that process we think that way. It gives us an opportunity to make self improvements and do self introspection, which is always a good thing. If there is not such a thing that if we can correct that perception, if we can correct the behavior, and that helps solve that problem for other person, then yeah, well and great. But sometimes maybe other person has misunderstandings that it was not a simply that type of behavior, but a person somehow got a perception that there is a behavior like that. In that case, you can quietly have a conversation with the person and look, there is some misunderstanding and you want to help them solve, but never ever engage in a anger or in a blame game or accusations. So that would make it worse, even if it's other person's misperception. That's one way to do it. Suppose now it was you who didn't like someone else's behavior. And first, we need to go through the concepts that we have learned about ourselves, our soul, who we are, and completely first detach ourselves from our relative self, from our body, our external circumstances, in our thought process, and think through that this is only temporary. This is part of life. Being a worldly soul, this is part of life, and this is going to happen, and no one else is responsible for it. It may be my own kashayas. It is my own karmas, and even though the karmas may be giving its result that result in unpleasant situations for us, it's not really hurting. Karmas don't really cause hurt to me. It's basically due to my own mistakes about getting indulged into those situations. I think my wrong beliefs and my kashayas are the cause for it. When you think through these type of thought process, and of try to contemplate about, okay, what is right, what is wrong, where am I, what am I thinking wrong, why am I indulging into this type of kashayas? It helps us correct our wrong perceptions and wrong thinking, and helps us eliminate kashayas at that point. And then when we are quiet, and then things are quiet, if we are able to engage with other person in a calm manner, then we can try to convey our point of view in that time. That, hey, look, uh, this time, this is the behavior that I didn't like, and I got hurt because of this reason or whatnot. You can try to convey that. If other person accepts it, well and great. You can conflict can be resolved. And if it is done in a positive manner, in a straightforward and a positive manner, then there are more chances of resolving conflict. But oftentimes, what happens is we people get into uh, confrontational mode, where they try to confront person, and then just makes the whole situation worse. And a lot of times also happens that we don't really convey what we feel to other person. So other person is never aware of our behavior. And then suddenly one day we explode. And then that makes the whole situation really worse. So forming a habit of straightforward communication with other party involved to convey the dislike politely towards the behavior and not the person. So always, even when we have a dislike towards the other's behavior, think of it as a dislike towards that person's behavior, not necessarily towards a person in itself. So a consciousness is a permanent entity. Maybe you have a problem with the individual behavior at the time, but that doesn't make the whole person bad forever. There is no basis for us to hold grudges or dislikes forever. So that's the way to deal with that type of conflict. Okay, one of the other things also in these type of conflicts, don't ever speculate and doubt. Always question your own assumptions and clarify your own thinking. Basically, a lot of times what happens is people think of themselves as a body language expert. They try to speculate what's going on in other person's mind. Now, none of us can 100% say for sure what's going on in other person's mind. So it is always a good idea to take on a face value what other person is saying. Just be done with it. Because if we keep always speculating that, hey, other person is thinking like this for me, although he's saying this, he doesn't really mean it, then there is no end to that conflict. Even if the conflict is externally resolved between you guys, the doubt will keep you in a fire. Conflict will drag on internally within us by having speculating. So speculation may help you in taking a professional judgment about making right decisions at work, about your workplace, maybe choosing certain medicine or whatever, finding the cause of certain diseases. In interpersonal situations like this, speculations always lead to bad outcomes. So do not speculate. Stop the dialogue if it starts turning into an unpleasant argument. Give the other person time to calm down and try some other time. If it is about asking for forgiveness from someone, and if you think that if you try to go ask for forgiveness, the situation may become worse because the other person may get really angry or something, maybe instant messaging or phone conversations can be preferred if you sense the possibility of verbal confrontation. And then finally, learn to even if there is a genuine conflict that you experience and it was due to someone else's mistake, learn to genuinely forgive the past and move on. Because holding grudges really never solves the problem. And I've seen certain conflicts being dragged on for the entire lives in people, and they really do not bring any positive outcomes. For a workplace, organizational conflicts, clear demarcation of roles and responsibilities would help avoid and resolve the conflicts. A lot of time at work, we get into conflict because there is a not enough clarity about the roles and responsibilities, the duties involved in a particular type of position, and that may lead to conflict. Or there may not be a proper procedure or a guideline. So standardizing those roles and guidelines would definitely help here. And finally, in no matter what you do, certain conflicts may not be resolved. So, and suppose there was something you did that someone else got upset with you, and that person is not willing to forgive you, or no matter what, how many times you ask forgiveness. So maybe externally this conflict is not resolved, but internally, by asking for forgiveness and not holding any grudges or not holding any negative kashayas, that will definitely resolve the conflict for you internally because you are out of it. At least you did the best you could in that situation. So applying proper philosophical understanding would ensure that the person can still live peacefully. Conflict remains unsolved for some reason. That's the way to deal with conflicts. Right? Did it give you a clear idea? There are 4 types of conflicts that we talked about. Well, mainly 2. One is a disagreement type conflict. Second is a dislike type conflict. Disagreement type conflict can be due to 3 types of matters: objective, relative, and subjective. And then the final dislike is due to our own feelings and egos. And so we saw how we can positively resolve each type of conflict. Does that make sense? Any comments or suggestions? Or is there a type of conflict that you find yourself in that you cannot resolve using these guidelines? I think we have tried to be as comprehensive in terms of analyzing different types of conflicts and sources of conflicts and dealing with it. But is there a type of conflict you can think of that is not covered by these? Pritesh, can you think of any?
No, I can't.
So as you can see, Jain philosophy is such a powerful tool that helps us. If we really use it, it helps us deal with so many possibilities and situations in life. And so I just wanted to show you some examples. And you may not find these things directly written somewhere in Jain scriptures. If you think about it, this is the essence of it, of all the principles. If you think of it, it avoids all the negativity, it avoids all the different types of wrong beliefs and kashayas, and it also suggests to avoid all the wrong external behavior that don't allow us to engage in a positive manner. So it's such a wonderful tool if we utilize it. I can't think of a conflict that cannot be resolved using these guidelines. And even as we've seen, even if it remains unresolved, at least we can live peacefully if we apply this principle. Maybe other person may choose to not get himself out of the conflict, but we can choose to get ourselves out of conflict by applying this principle. But a lot of times I've seen is speculation, accusations, doubts. They really destroy the possibility of resolving any conflict. So trust is very important here. Next is a positive thinking. So I want to also bring about some opinions, Jain views about positive thinking. The common definition of positive thinking is to keep thinking that circumstances will eventually turn out the way we want. And if we get things we want, we think it is positive, and otherwise we think everything else is negative. In reality, this is not a positive thinking because it promotes the underlying fear of failure and anxiety of getting particular results. Due to this fear and anxiety, a person can't even focus on task at hand. What is the Jain definition of positive thinking? The Jain definition of positive thinking would be to realistically assess and perfect the knowledge, perform the task at the same time, and at the same time become fearless and detached of the end result by contemplating correct philosophical concepts. So yes, you do the best you can. You always avoid the negativity out of it, but you're prepared to face any outcome. You're not really afraid of it, and you really don't. You fully realize that you have no control over external circumstances. So you don't have a. Although you may have a preference, you have no hard expectations of things going one way or other. So you're fully detached and relaxed, and there is no fear of failure, or there is no unnecessary anxiety of things going your way always. So that's the Jain definition of positive thinking: being fearless and being free from anxiety. And when we apply these type of principles of conflict management and positive thinking, I think we always end up becoming a better person, and we can live our life without stress. So with this, we have covered the topic of reducing the intensity of stress. These are the different tools. Let's recap them differently. First of all, we have to have a grasp of good philosophical understanding of the philosophical Jain principles. That's first thing. Second thing, we need to learn to introspect them into our own life. And next time we can see the case study, how we can do different cases, in what format we can apply the thought process to apply these principles in our life. Second thing, when resolving conflicts. Third thing is resolving conflict, and fourth one is positive thinking. By applying these tools in our life, we can reduce the intensity of stress so much in our life. And only when we start forming habit of doing this, then we can eventually work towards reducing stress from root cause. And that topic we will take it next time after we see the case study of how to resolve stress by applying different philosophical principles. After doing that, we will get into basically the state of significantly reduced stress, which is how to acquire some darshan. So the process of acquiring that, and we will talk about that in upcoming sessions. Okay. Is there any questions? Are there any questions for now?
No.
Was this helpful?
Yep. Mhm.
The reason for doing, having these sessions and having these conversations is we oftentimes spend a lot of time in learning the principles, but very little we think about how to apply them and how to basically, we need to kind of construct our own thought processes to apply these principles in life. So maybe these sessions will help us do that. Okay, with that, then I think we are done. We will see you all next time. Jai Jinendra.